Hi, thank you for your time attending this session. I will discuss about the EA role, what it is, what you'll do, and how to get started. Before anything else, I will introduce myself. My name is May Abellanosa. I am from the Philippines, and I want to welcome you in this orientation. Just a bit of a background about myself. I am an EA for over 3 years now, and I have worked in a top tier agency, and I served clients based in the United States and in Australia. So, just a disclaimer that I am doing this seminar out of goodwill, and I am not connected to any company, and I am not a recruiter. I cannot give you a job, but what I can do is to help you prepare for one the right way. That's why this session exists. So, this session is specifically made for those who are curious about the EA role, who are trying to figure out if this is the career path worth pursuing. And if you have ever thought, I want to work online, but I don't know what skills I need, then you are absolutely in the right place. Okay, now we are going to talk about the EA role. So, the EA role is a professional role defined by the ability to tame operational chaos and put structure around the executive's world. So, actually, we are expected to fully own and autonomously manage the executive's primary pain points, which includes inbox, scheduling, and travel. So, if you think about it, we are more of partners rather than assistants because assistants, the word assistant is like you're assisting someone. That for me, that will entail like someone giving you an order and then you following. So that is just my interpretation. But when you say partner, you are like actively involved in the operations, and you are helping your executive to reach a goal. So, as partners or as EAs, how do we help the executive reach their goal? That is to help them, you know, and manage their pain points, which are the inbox, the calendar, and the travel. Because if these things are left unmanaged and in chaos, they cannot focus on doing the broader and bigger goals, such as, strategy in the business, maybe acquiring more investors, etc., etc. Because they will get caught up on the operations, everything will be in chaos, and something or most things will fall through the cracks. So that is how essential an EA is. Right. Now that we understood what the role is about, like a broader description or description of the role, I'm going to show you my daily routine as a remote worker. So, because being a remote worker is not an easy job, um, especially here in the Philippines, the time zone gap is very huge. So USA, Philippines, the time gap is so huge. So we usually work in graveyard shifts. Now, how do I balance that as someone living in the Philippines while working US hours? I have this routine. Okay. So I am showing you my routine very briefly because I just want to highlight that remote work, although remote, is not all freedom in coffee shops. So I work hours that align with US hours. So that means I have built routines, rituals to help me stay focused and healthy and still get that work life balance. So I'm showing you this one so you will have an overview and a realistic picture of what your day could look like outside of work because we support clients based abroad. Usually, the hours are often outside of our country's standard 9 to 5. So, you are going to assess if this schedule fits your lifestyle. And so you also understand the demands of the job, and also you will understand how are you going to manage your time. So that is just the um, yeah, the just why I'm showing you the routine. Now let's move over to the three core tasks of an EA. Now, these tasks are the foundation of being an EA. Basic tasks. Okay? We mentioned it briefly in the introduction of the description of the role, but we will go in detail. Right? Let's start with inbox management. There are plenty of best practices for inbox management. And you will know more about that when you start taking the prep course after this session. But in this session, we're going to define the goal of each core tasks, and then we're going to discuss each key tasks. Right now, the goal for inbox management is to ensure the client's email is organized, actionable, and prioritized, minimizing cognitive load and keeping communication flowing. Now, in a practical sense, to really like illustrate this goal, our goal would be like this. If I am your client and I sit in my desk, I open my email, and if I feel that I can understand what I'm going to do first, what I need to act on first, and what I need to reply on that day, then we have reached that goal. Okay? So basically, we are giving our client the clarity that they need when they open their inbox. That's like the broader goal. We make it organized, we make it actionable and prioritized because the inbox of a busy executive will always have important items in it mixed with the chaos like the spams, the newsletter stuffs, and not important things. So we need to design the inbox in a way that it will give our client clarity. The key tasks first, of course, to achieve that goal, we're going to do like key tasks. First is to triage the email. categorize the emails. Again, not all emails are important, right? So to do this, you must also align with your client because some clients do have existing labels in their inbox. So we're not using folders in the inbox, we're using labels, right? In Google Calendar, no, in Google Mail, you know, they use labels, same as Superhuman and any other email management platforms. Well, again, we categorize the emails based on either the client's existing system or a system that we propose. But make sure to discuss it with your client so they understand your labeling because at the end of the day, it's your client who will be looking at his email, not only you, but your client as well. So both of you needs to understand the system. So there are plenty of like triaging systems, but basically, um, an example here is like you label based on urgency and priority, and also like if this one is just for reference only, something like that. You can like do research on email triage and how to label if your client don't have an existing labeling system. So that is your assignment and add that to your to-do list. Right. Next is prioritization. Of course, when we like triage the client's email, we put labeling. We do not only label them and then leave them. We also read them. And then often we will notice that when we read an email, there is like an action item for our client, or it could be like an event invite or like decision request. So when we get these emails, we do not only just read it and leave it there, we also prioritize it based on like um, the urgency, the deadline, or etc., etc. We flag those to our client as well and also we track it in our system. So the key is we do not leave unactioned items in the inbox. So when we open an email and if there are action items in there, that needs to be transferred somewhere that we can track it if it has been done or not done. It could be a task management tracker that we will discuss later on. Okay. Next is response drafting. So sometimes your client will also ask you to draft responses in their tone and voice, so it will be easy for them to um, like reply to emails. They just review your draft, tweak a little bit, and then they can send it. But you have to take note that when you do this, you must have great familiarity of how your client communicate. Okay? Of course, we do not just leave the distractions in the inbox, we also filter it. So we can do like automation rules of um, filtering unwanted emails. You can also unsubscribe to unwanted newsletters. And then summarization. So this is tied to the flagging of action items or the prioritization. So, for example, in like a week, you were able to flag some action items to your client, and then you haven't really heard back if those action items have been done. So, you can send like end of week summary of everything to your client, and then just checking if which of these action items are done and not done, so you can like keep on tracking them until they are done. Also, reminder of some deadlines, etc., etc. Okay. So, in inbox management, the key traits of um, of an EA is having discretion, because you're going to decide here if which falls through each label or category. Written communication, of course, you'll be drafting a response, judgment, and attention to tone. So that's it. That's inbox management, right? Now let's move over to calendar management. The goal is to design a calendar that reflects the client's goal, protects focus time, and avoids overload or conflicts. So the key here is design, right? So when we are designing something, we are intentional, right? So um, calendar management is intentional. It's not only like a meeting is there because that is a priority or it aligns with your client's goals and like yeah the goals or the company's goals, something like that. You will not schedule a meeting just because someone asked you to schedule. Let me clarify that statement. When we book meetings, we book with the right context, right? So we must know what is that meeting about, why it's there, and why is it important for our client. Because our client's day will easily fill if you just schedule meetings because someone asks you to. As an EA, you have the duty to protect your client's time. So only meetings that are really necessary, that your client needs to be there, those end up in their calendar. So let me give you an example. Um, weekly sales meeting, something like that. So when you know the right context, um, that meeting is just like a routine meeting of the sales team, and then your client is not actually required to be there, but just optional. And then he will be just a spectator, right? And then there is also another meeting that is like an investor meeting. So your client is really required to be there. So which meeting must end up in your client's calendar? So of course, that meeting that your client is required to be there. And instead of attending to those optional meetings that will not really like that will not benefit your client, that will just add to a chunk, I mean that will just like get a chunk of his time, then it would be preferred if he will not attend that optional meeting and just focus on doing like deep works, like checking on his emails or doing some other stuff. So that's it. So when you book meetings, you book with the right context. And of course, in a calendar invite, you must have that link in there. Very important if it's a remote meeting. And if not a remote one, a physical meeting, a location should be there. So there's like a standard format that you will learn in the best practice prep course. Of course, there must be buffers as well. It depends on your clients, how how many meetings back to back they can tolerate. So some may tolerate like three 1 hour meetings back to back, and then 15 minutes buffer, and then go for the next set of meetings. But it will totally depend on your client's preference. Time blocking. So in your client's calendar, as I have said, it will reflect their goal. So most probably your client will have like some other tasks outside of meetings, right? So they must do, if they're podcasters, they must do recordings, or if they are like um, authors, then they will dedicate time of their day to write chapters of their books, etc., etc. So you must also block times for deep work, for other activities that is aligned with their priorities. So what I do with my clients' um, calendar personally. So I set like meetings all in the morning. Then afternoon, I reserve that for deep work and for his personal things to do, like recordings, etc., etc. So mornings, all meetings, and then keep afternoon clear for any other works that is not a meeting. Okay. Next, of course, when you do calendar management, you have to also take note of time zone differences, because, like, since you're like, um, you're, how do you call this? You're operating in a remote environment, of course. Mostly, your clients will your client and their network will be from different parts of the United States or from another country. So mostly there are time zone differences. So you have to take note of that when you're scheduling to avoid any conflict. And event prep. Yes, so um, in meetings, if it is required for you to create an agenda, or like there's an agenda already created, you also attach that to the calendar invite, and also like any documents, because like I'll give you an example, all right? So there's a meeting, um you only put um something like call with Sam in the calendar invite, and then there's like a link. When I'm your client, I check that invite and it just says call with Sam. I won't be sure who Sam is, right? I don't have the context, and it's lacking. It's the agenda is not there. I don't know what that meeting is about. So always put agenda, any documents. So like everything is there and all information is front loaded for your client. So they just need to like read it and they understand what that meeting is about. Okay. And then weekly calendar reviews. This is very important. What I do and practice is number one, I look back like every week on Friday. I look back at any meetings that has been done for that week, and then I flag any action items left that still needs to be done by my client, and then any action items that I need to do, so um I don't lose anything. And I just like list them down, make sure they are complete before the week ends, or what I could carry over next week. And then second part, I also look in the future for the next week, and I just see like what are the meetings scheduled? Are there any conflicts? Do I need to prep um, like logistics for any travel that is upcoming? So I'll do that on Fridays, like looking back and looking ahead. Right. So yes. So availability optimization. This is what I did with my clients' time, like batching um, similar like activities to avoid context switching, like like much context switching. So basically, like that, what I'm doing, like batching like meetings in the morning and then all um, offline tasks or like non-meeting tasks in the afternoon. So yes, almost done. Travel management. So in travel management, our goal is to plan trips that is tailored to our clients' preferences and needs. Say it is always tailored to their needs and preferences because they're traveling and they need help to sort out all the logistics involved. So, in travel management, you do flight research and booking. So, it's always first flight research before booking. And when you research, you do not give all of the options that you find. You curate the options based on their preferences and their needs, and you will only give maybe top three to top five options. That way, you don't give much cognitive load to your client. So you must know their preferences, like if they like Delta or what airline do they prefer most, um, which seat do they prefer more, etc., etc. So preferences, um, and then of course needs as well. Like, do they need to land before 12 p.m. because like the event is like at maybe 1 p.m., something like that. So it depends on like the circumstances around the travel. How are you gonna arrange the logistics? Accommodation, of course, just booking hotels or in Airbnbs that is like very close to their event venues or based on their loyalty preferences. Like if there's like no venue, just for leisure, maybe you book those hotels that is within their like um like if they're like an active um member, because most likely they will earn points if they book from those like hotel chains such as Hyatt or Marriott. Okay, ground transportation as well. So in travel management, you always need to create like an itinerary. So an itinerary is like a rundown of all the happenings in that particular trip, like from the moment they walk out the door to the moment they they ride in a car to the airport, like all of that will be like listed in the itinerary in detail. So when your client reads it, they can already imagine like what the trip how the trip will run. Um So when you also plan trips, you also need to um, take into account the delays. So there needs to be like a contingency plan in place in case of any delays. So as an EA, you also need to monitor those delays and if there are any cancellations, so you can solve them proactively in behalf of your clients. So when your client finds out, you already did solve the problem. Right. Okay. Um, I think that's it for travel management. The best practices again will be found in the prep course that you will take after this short session. So, aside from the core responsibilities of executive assistants, EAs also handle several operational tasks. So, these tasks are directly connected to the core duties, right? So, They're directly connected to the core duties, but they're related to operations. So the first one is task management, right? So um, keep track of ongoing tasks, prioritize effectively, etc., etc. We know already that um, EAs have like core tasks, right? Inbox calendar, travel, like that. So when we do all of these core tasks, we resurface action items, right? So as I have mentioned in inbox management, when we read an email, there are action items in there. Of course, when we do calendar management as well, there are like action items that arise, like, oh, we need to book flights, we need to find hotels, etc., etc. So action items resurface here and there. So that is why an executive assistant needs to have a strong task management skills. Task management skill is a critical part of being an EA because we manage our own tasks. So like all of those tasks that are related to the core task. Also, we also help and keep track of our clients' tasks, like their to dos. So you must have a system. You cannot just place it somewhere and hope to remember it. You won't remember it. Trust me, you won't remember it. You have to have a system in place. Okay. So we will like dig deeper into task management. So I will share with you rather what I do. So I keep a task tracker for myself and for my client. So the task tracker for my client holds action items that I flag to him. So he knows like when is the deadline, um, um, what is the priority, etc., etc. That is for him. And I also keep my task tracker. This is for the core tasks that I do, inbox, calendar, travel. So as you can see here in the columns, there's like a task name, an effort level, priority, status, due date. So like I put like priority there, high, medium, low. How do I define high priority? Well, I define it if it is like time bounded or very urgent, and then if it has high impact to the operations. Like if I cannot do that task, it will significantly affect the operations, then that is high priority for me. Or if it's like clear or if it's like there's a clear deadline and it's fast approaching, then that is also high priority. And then I only like exercise judgment and discretion for the rest, for medium and low. um Status, of course, you need to have a system where you can track like things that are done and not yet. So and also recurring tasks like tasks that I do every day. And then you can see here in the effort level, like I tag them according to how much time I anticipate that I will spend on that particular task. This is important for me so I can like plan them in my 8 hours of shift for that day. So I know how many tasks I can do in a certain day. There's also like a Google Sheet version of this one. This one is like a Notion version, and this one is a Google Sheet. Okay, so that's how I manage the tasks. Basically, keeping a task tracker, and I don't just rely on memory. I put them in a tracker. Right? File organization. Well, this is like very straightforward. You organize files, of course, and it is like in a cloud-based storage. It could be like Google Drive or Dropbox. Then you like rename those folders based on the naming system that is existing, or you can create one, but you need to discuss this with your client before you even start organizing their files. So you must align on this one with your client. Next, time management. This is also attached to the task management because I have mentioned previously in the task management, I assign like time for each task, like time I anticipate that the task will be completed. That is time management because um, we only have 8 hours of our day for the work. So we have to budget our time effectively. Okay. So we must like do time blocks, plan what we need to do in a particular hour. So this is how I do my work day. Um, First hour of my shift, I do inbox and calendar triage. So I check my inbox, flag any action items for my client, put them in the agenda somewhere, put them in the task tracker too. And then for any action items for me, I put in my task tracker. Also calendar, like any logistics that needs to be done or any meetings that needs to be scheduled, etc., etc. I put them in the tracker too. So that is like the first hour. So after that, I'm going to prepare for the sync because me and my client do one-on-one syncs every single day. So we keep like an agenda of all the things that we discuss. So I prepare that before the actual sync. So it will usually run an hour or less. So there we discuss our top priority for the day, resolve any blockers, etc. And then after that, I catch up on action items for the day, like 10:30 to 12. That is when I do all of the admin tasks and operational tasks, such as doing inbox calendar and travel tasks in the morning. And I do lunch. And after that, in the afternoon, I reserve that for very intentional work, like any project work, tracking of projects or any strategy work, um, like creating website, etc. So not really tied to the usual basic core tasks. It's more of like strategy and project work in the afternoon, and then I do like end of day wrap, um, the last hour of my shift. So that is how I batch my tasks based on time blocks. So yeah, right. So now that we know the core task and then the operational task, let's discuss niche based and ad hoc tasks. So niche based tasks are like tasks or responsibilities that is tailored to your client's field or lifestyle. Like for example, if your client is an influencer, um, you most likely will also do social media management, even if you're not a social media manager, even if you're an EA, or if your client is like into construction, probably you will support like organizing some construction plans, even though you're not an engineer, etc. But you're not actually like doing all the plans, just organizing them. So yeah, because there are things that you do not because that is your role as an EA, because the definition of an EA, as we remember, is like we are partners to achieving our client's goal. So basically, there's like no list of tasks that an EA must do. It's all encompassing because we are supporting the person and not their role. So it could be that sometimes ad hoc tasks come in, like it's related to their professional life, that they want you to order flowers for their wife, um, like research schools for their kids. So those are really possible if you're an EA, because again, we are supporting our client um, as who they are professionally and personally. So these tasks can also appear outside of the core tasks. So these are like project assistance, it could be a research support, data entry, social media support, and then communications. Like you could also be like um, customer facing. Um, so you answer inquiries, you resolve issues, things like that. So, but do remember when you're communicating in behalf of your client. So when you make mistakes or when you mess up, it will be reflected to their reputation and not yours. They will not remember someone communicating to them as you. Like for example, they will not remember someone named May Paula Abelinosa communicating to them. They will remember someone who is the assistant to your executive communicating to them, if that makes sense to you. Like your name is not attached to your communication, even if you are doing it. No, your name is not attached. It is always your client's name that is attached. So you have to be professional at all times, right? Okay. Um, tasks can be all taught. We already discussed like like overview of the tasks that an EA do. So those can be taught, those can be practiced, but the real value of an EA comes from not like what they can do, but from who they are and not just from what they know. Okay? And this is especially true in remote settings because our attitude becomes our reputation. Now, there are five core traits that sets a great EA apart from just an EA. Number one is proactiveness. Okay, we anticipate the client's need before they ask. So basically, we are like really in sync with our clients like operations, and we understand their goals and needs to be able to do this. For example, here, yesterday you have back-to-back calls from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Today I have blocked 15 minutes break in between. So you see how proactive this EA is. So just by observation, this EA noticed that, you know, yesterday the client had back-to-back calls. Of course, the EA felt that that is very overwhelming for the client. So he or she took step the next day to reschedule or move the meetings to give like 15-minute breaks in between without the client even asking for the for to the EA to do it. So it's like, wow, very proactive. So that is number one. Next is empathy. You understand how your client feels, not just what they're doing. So they must have like emotional intelligence here. So, for example, here, if your client had a tough call, maybe delay non urgent messages until the next day. So, of course, after the tough call, your client could be burnt out, overwhelmed, etc. So, you don't want to like bother them with any non urgent things. You don't want to get into their nerves. So, you just, you know, um, empathize to your client. Clarity and communication. So when you communicate, you have to be very concise and confident in your updates, right? So here, there's like a bad and a great example. A bad example says, "Hi, just wanted to check if maybe you want me to reschedule our sync. Let me know." A great example is, "I moved our sync to 2 p.m. to give you a buffer before your investor call." Bad example. That is a bad example because number one, in the bad example, it's like switching the decision making to the client, asking the client if the meeting must be moved or not. They hired an EA to manage their schedule. Of course, as an EA, that's your job to manage the schedule. You don't need permission from the client to move things around in their schedule because, in the first place, that is your job as the EA. So, when I'm your client and you ask me this, I'll just ask you another question. Like, don't you know my schedule? You can check in my calendar if our sync can be rescheduled, right? So, like a right way to do this is like say that you already moved the schedule, and so like and then you must have a reason why you moved the schedule. So you say like I moved the schedule to 2 p.m. because to give you buffer before your investor call. And let me know if that works for you. If not, we can always revert back to the original schedule, right? Because you can always shift back. It's just you and the client who is like talking. So it's like just easy to like shift it, right? Okay. Similar thing when you're scheduling and then there's like another attendee. You don't need permission from your client to like schedule a specific block. Like, do you want this meeting to be at 2 p.m.? Your client will just ask you, why are you asking me? Is 2 p.m. available in my calendar? If it's yes and it's available for the other like participant, then book it, right? You don't need to ask permission. Right? So be clear in your communication. Next, ownership. You take full responsibility, um, and you don't pass problems to your clients. For example, your client gave you a task to book a hotel, and then the hotel site is not working. You don't just get back to your client and say, "Oh, the hotel site is not working." You say something like, yes, the hotel site is not working, but I already contacted support and instead booked via Expedia with the same dates and rates. So you see the difference here. Like the EA front loaded the problem. Yes, that's good. You always keep clients informed of the problem, but there must always be like a solution attached to it. Or if not yet solved, then you must give your client like an idea of how you're going to solve it, right? So like an update, just an update client, like there's a problem, but here's how I will fix it, and I got this, something like that. So that will give your client an impression that there's a problem, but you're already on top of it. Okay, you own that, right? And you're not passing the problem to your client to solve. Next, love for improving systems. So as EAs, when we notice any gaps in SOPs or there unclear communications, as a great EA, naturally we want to fix it. So if there are um like steps in the SOPs that are not clear and becoming a bottleneck, as a great EA, you always step up to solve those. Right? That's it. The truth about this job is it's not simple. It's not always easy. There will be like great demands for this job because after all you are a partner to the CEO. But I think it would be worth it because this is like a high paying role and mostly long term, right? So I'm just going to give you an overview of how you're going to start as a new executive assistant. So basically, there are many EA jobs out there. If you're new, don't worry because there are many EA jobs out there, but you need to prove that you have the right skills. Many think that clients are looking for experienced assistants. Well, maybe that's the case. Sometimes they're looking for experienced assistants, not because they're looking for like the actual experience. They just need someone who is credible. Okay, what do I mean by that? Credibility comes with experience. Of course, when you have already done something, you have the credibility. You have that stamp of credibility that you can prove that you can do it again, right? So credibility comes with experience. And clients, remember, they hire assistants because they want someone to solve their problems. They don't want like to guide assistants to onboard, have a training, etc. They want like plug and play, right? So how can you like prove to your client that even if you don't have the experience, how can you make yourself like employable? Well, invest in the right skills. If you have the right skills, and even if you don't have the experience, if you can show to the client that you have the skill and you can do the job, then you will most likely land a client. Okay, you can apply directly, or you can join a virtual assistant agency. They're open to hiring and training, and they have a pool of clients. And when you join an agency, you will be also credible, so you have that credibility already. So that's also a good option, right? Okay. I think that is it for like this session. Now, there's like a simulator course that I created where you can practice like having a fictional client and do EA tasks there. But before you take that simulator course, take the prep course first. So after this session, after you watch this recording, you need to go to the prep course, take the prep course, and then once you're ready, then take the simulator course. Right? Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for listening and watching this whole recording. It's quite long, but thank you for your time.